The morning they humiliated Daniel in the middle of the company lobby, nobody knew that the poor janitor they were laughing at was the CEO's only son. His faded uniform was covered with dust, his shoes were worn at the heels, and his hands were rough from years of cleaning floors that people like them walked across without a second thought. When one employee deliberately knocked a cup of coffee onto the floor and told Daniel to clean it while everyone watched, the laughter that followed seemed louder than the sound of the falling cup. Daniel lowered his eyes, picked up the broken pieces, and quietly cleaned the mess. But what those cruel employees did not know was that Daniel had walked into that building carrying a secret that could change every life inside it. Before we continue, if you believe kindness matters, second chances can change people, and nobody should ever be judged by their clothes or their job. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs this message, leave a comment, and subscribe to SoulTales. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories about kindness, family, and the unexpected ways life can change. Daniel had once lived a completely different life. He was the only child of Robert Hayes, the wealthy founder and CEO of Hayes International, one of the largest companies in the city. Daniel had grown up surrounded by expensive cars, private schools, and everything money could provide. But when his mother died unexpectedly, something inside him changed. She had always taught him that a person's value was never determined by wealth. She often reminded him that the people who cleaned offices, served meals, drove buses, and carried heavy boxes deserved the same dignity as executives sitting behind polished desks. After her death, Daniel began questioning the life he had been born into. He wanted to understand people beyond boardrooms and family dinners. More importantly, he wanted to prove to himself that he could survive without his father's name. Then tragedy struck again. Daniel's wife died after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with their 6-year-old daughter, Lily. His priorities changed overnight. He no longer cared about luxury. He cared about keeping a roof over Lily's head, putting food on the table, and making sure she grew up knowing that kindness was more important than status. Daniel refused financial help from his father and took a job as a janitor at Hayes International without revealing who he was. He wanted to experience the company from the bottom, not because he hated his father, but because he wanted to understand the people his father employed. For almost a year, Daniel arrived before sunrise. He emptied trash cans, cleaned bathrooms, polished floors, and quietly fixed small things others ignored. Most employees never learned his name. To them, he was simply the janitor. Some greeted him politely, but others treated him as if he were invisible. Daniel never complained. Every afternoon, he hurried home to Lily, who waited at their tiny apartment with her schoolbooks spread across the kitchen table. He cooked simple meals, helped her with homework, and listened when she told him about her day. Their life was modest, but their home was filled with love. The trouble began with a group of employees from the executive department. They were young, well-dressed, and convinced that their expensive suits made them more important than everyone around them. Their unofficial leader was Marcus, a senior assistant who often mocked Daniel whenever he passed by. He called him slow, laughed at his old shoes, and once complained that Daniel's uniform made the office look cheap. Daniel always responded with silence. One Friday morning, the executive floor was preparing for an important corporate meeting. Daniel was cleaning the marble lobby when Marcus and 2 coworkers walked toward him. Marcus deliberately dropped his coffee directly in Daniel's path and then laughed. Instead of apologizing, he told Daniel to clean it immediately. When Daniel bent down, another employee took out her phone and recorded him. They laughed as Daniel wiped the coffee from the floor with a cloth. Then Marcus noticed a small photograph tucked inside Daniel's cleaning cart. It showed Daniel standing beside Lily. Marcus picked it up, mocked Daniel for having a child, and made a cruel comment about how difficult it must be for a poor janitor to raise a daughter alone. Daniel's face tightened, but he said nothing. He simply took the photograph back and placed it carefully in his pocket. That moment hurt more than anything they had done before. Daniel could tolerate insults directed at himself. But when they mocked Lily, something inside him broke. Still, he remembered his mother's words. Anger could win a moment, but kindness could change a life. So he walked away. What Daniel did not know was that someone had witnessed everything. Robert Hayes, Daniel's father and the company's CEO, had arrived at the building earlier than expected. He had been watching security footage from his office when he saw his son being humiliated. Daniel had refused to tell his father about the treatment he received because he wanted to solve his own problems. But Robert had secretly known about Daniel's job for months. He had respected his son's decision and had chosen not to interfere. That morning, however, Robert could no longer remain silent. Before confronting the employees, he asked the head of security to investigate everything that had happened during Daniel's time at the company. The report revealed months of disrespect, insults, deliberate humiliation, and even instances where employees had intentionally left messes for Daniel to clean while laughing at him. Then Robert made a decision that would shake the entire company. The following Monday, every department manager was called into the main conference room. Employees gathered, confused by the sudden meeting. Marcus and his friends stood near the back, still joking about the janitor. Then the elevator doors opened. Robert Hayes walked into the room. Behind him was Daniel. But this time, Daniel wasn't wearing his janitor uniform. He wore a simple dark suit, and beside him stood Lily, holding his hand. The room became completely silent. Robert looked around at the employees and explained that Daniel was not merely a janitor. He was his only son, the heir to Hayes International, and the person who would eventually inherit the company. He explained that Daniel had chosen to work anonymously because he wanted to understand the people who kept the company running every day. Marcus's face lost all its color. The woman who had recorded Daniel dropped her phone onto the table. But Daniel didn't smile. He didn't celebrate their fear. Instead, he looked at the people who had humiliated him and said that the real lesson wasn't that they had mistreated the CEO's son. The lesson was that they had mistreated a human being simply because they believed he was powerless. Robert announced that the employees involved would face disciplinary action. Some were suspended, others were dismissed, and every department was ordered to undergo a workplace dignity and respect program. But Daniel asked his father for one additional thing, that the company create a program giving struggling employees opportunities for training, education, and advancement. His father agreed. Weeks later, Daniel continued visiting the company, but he no longer worked as a janitor. He became involved in employee welfare programs and spent time speaking with workers most executives rarely noticed. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and he never wanted anyone else to feel that way. One evening, Daniel returned home and found Lily waiting by the door with a small handmade card. On it she had written, "Daddy, I'm proud of you." Daniel hugged her tightly. He realized that becoming wealthy had never been his greatest victory. His greatest victory was becoming the kind of father his daughter could look up to. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that every person deserves respect, and subscribe to SoulTales for more stories about kindness, family, courage, and second chances. Sometimes a simple act of kindness can reach someone whose story we know nothing about. And before the story ends, I want you to leave one special comment. Everyone deserves respect. Write those words if you believe a person's job, clothing, money, or social position should never determine their worth. Daniel never forgot the day those employees laughed at him. But he also never forgot what that painful moment taught him. People may judge the clothes you wear, the work you do, or the life you live, but none of those things determine your value. A janitor can carry the heart of a king, a struggling father can possess unimaginable strength, and the quietest person in the room may be carrying a story powerful enough to change everyone around him. Daniel entered that building as a man nobody noticed, but he left that chapter of his life knowing something far more valuable than his family's fortune. True worth is revealed not by how people treat those above them, but by how they treat those they believe are beneath them.